Hi everyone, today we're going to start the Veronica Doily. I'd like to thank Erika Tashiro for giving me permission to use her pattern. Now if you don't have the pattern yet, I've included the link in the description box down below. What I'm going to show you throughout the process of making Veronica is how I personally like to tat. That doesn't mean it's the only way to do it, it's what I found works for me. There can be different ways to do the same technique, and every tat will have their own preference of what works best for them. So watch as many videos as you can, play around with different ideas until you discover a way that you like to do it. I'm going to be using different techniques for each round, and hopefully we might cover something that's new for you. Normally I'd use the same technique throughout the whole project, but the purpose of doing Veronica is to learn new stuff. So row 1 can be worked with a ball of thread and a shuttle, or 2 shuttles. I'm going to use 2 shuttles wound with continuous thread. One of my earlier videos shows you how to wind your shuttles like this if you'd like to take a look. If you're going to use the continuous thread method but want to work with a ball of thread and a shuttle, simply wind your shuttle first and don't cut your ball thread. Because we're going to use the magic thread trick, we need to look at where we're going to put our loops. Usually they're placed in the first and last chains of the row. Again, I have an earlier video on the magic thread trick, which is a slower pace and has more detail if you'd like to check it out. All of our picots on our rings are joining picots, so I'm going to make mine quite small, and our chain has a single decorative picot, which I'll make a little bit larger than the joining picot. Our first ring, ring A, is 4 picot 4 picot 3. So you set your hand up for a ring, and we're going to make the first 4 double stitches. Work your picot. Now I like to use a gauge. You can just eyeball it, it's completely up to you. Work your next 4. Another picot. And 3. Now I'd like to quickly talk about posting your shuttle when you close a ring. I always used to post my shuttle. Then recently I had trouble with how my small rings were sitting next to the chain. So I called out for help from the tatting community, and someone suggested it was because I had posted my shuttle, and they were absolutely right. So after experimenting, I found that the smaller rings sat better if I didn't post my shuttle, while the larger rings sat very nicely when I did post. So the size of my thread also had an effect on this. So now sometimes I post and sometimes I don't. If I'm using a type of thread that I haven't used before, or if I think the stitch count is really small, I make a really quick little mock-up ring to see what's going to work best for me. So for now, for these rings, I've decided I'm going to do the extra half stitch and not post my shuttle. So that is our first ring. Ring B is 3 picot 4 picot 4. So I turn my ring just slightly to the left and wrap your hand ready for ring B. I make the thread from my shuttle sit slightly higher than the thread coming out from the last element, so in this case the ring, so that when I make the first half of the next stitch I can control where that comes down. I can make it sit right at the base of that ring and secure it with the second half that stitch. So ring B we're doing 3, picot and 4, another picot and 4. We have ring A and ring B. Turn your work and set up for a chain. Now I tap front side, back side, meaning that my chains will be worked in the reverse order. So instead of making my stitches in the order of first half, second half, I'll be doing the second half of the double stitch first and the first half second. If you're tatting traditionally, you will continue with first half, second half. This is where we need to include our magic thread. So we're going to chain 3, picot 3. Make the first part of your double stitch, whether it's first half or second half, depending on whether you're doing traditional or front side, back side. In the second part of that stitch, we need to place our magic loop. Goes through your stitch, pull your stitch up. So our magic thread runs parallel with our shuttle thread. Now loop of our magic loop needs to be facing to the left and the tails out to the right. Continue with the rest of your stitches, making sure that you're covering both your thread and your loop. I usually like to make about 8 stitches over my magic thread. Some people only do 5. It's completely up to you how many stitches you do. Because our chain is only a stitch count of 6, I'm going to continue the magic loop for the whole count. So that means I include the decorative picot. Again, some people prefer not to include or not to have the magic loop running through the base of their picot. I don't really think it matters, so I do it, especially if my stitch count's only small. That's 1. 2. For your last stitch, make the first half of that stitch and include the loop. Then fold your tails out of the way and do the second part of that stitch without the magic loop in it. Snug your stitches and turn your work. Setting up for ring C, we have 4 double stitches. We join to ring B, and then we have 4 picot 3. It's our first 4 double stitches. Now we're going to make an up join. So take your crochet hook, come down through your joining picot, pull up a loop, pop your finger through. Your shuttle comes from the bottom and passes up through your loop. It's an up join, so we're coming up with our shuttle. Give it a wriggle. Make everything sit nicely. Now we need to look at whether we're going to count our join or not. You can make the second half of the double stitch after your join and count this as your next stitch, or you can make the join, not count it, and continue with your next set of 4 double stitches. That's the way I like to do it. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 my join, and 1, 2, 3, 4. We have our next picot, and we're doing 3. Turn it slightly to the side and set up for ring D. Ring D is 3. Picot. And 4. Picot and 4. Turn your work. And we chain 3 picot 3. So continue like this until you have completed 9 rings and 4 chains, and I'll meet you back here to do the folded join and complete our first row. Okay, you should have 9 rings and 4 chains. We're up to making our final ring and chain to join back to our motif. So that we don't get a twisted picot, we will be making a folded join. So for your last ring, I find it helps if you just fold your motif out of the way. And our last ring is 3. picot and 4. Now we need to join our last ring to our first ring. So that we don't get a twisted picot, we're going to make a folded join. So fold your motif in half. Once again, there is a solid video on the folded join if you need to have a look at that. With your crochet hook, come up underneath your picot, twist your hook and reach over, pick up that thread and pull it down. Pop on your finger. Now your shuttle goes down through that loop. And give it a wriggle. And finish off your last 4 stitches. Turn your work over and set up for your chain. So our final chain also needs the magic thread, and this is done in the same way as we did for the first chain. So make the first part of your stitch. The second part we pop our loop in. So our loop needs to go the other way, meaning that your loop end needs to face out to the right and your tails out to the left. A decorative picot. And again, with your last stitch, the first part of it, include the loop and fold your loop up and out of the way and do the second part. Snug your stitches and turn your work. Leave a bit of a tail. Our core thread needs to come back into where we first started. Be careful that you don't pierce your magic loop when you're coming through to the back. On the other side. We're going to make a square knot. So we go right over left, and left over right. With your magic loops, I like to pair mine up with the tail with the closest loop, so they will be paired like that. Pop your tail through the loop, hold on to your stitches and snug it down. You want to leave a fairly good loop here so that you can pull it through. I like to use quilting grips. Hang on to those stitches and pull. I'll do the other side. Now, if you'd rather not use quilting grips, you can tie a little knot in the end of your tail and then just hook your finger through. I prefer the grips, but that's another way that you can do it as well if you tie a good knot. Have another go. Now I've made it too short. That's okay. Trim off your excess tail. And we have round one.